Hello, friends, clients, and fellow financial advisors. My name is Ron Bullis, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of LifeWorks Advisors, and welcome to another episode of The Future of Advice. My guest on today's show is the CEO and co-founder of FiComm Partners, an award-winning agency that specializes in working with RIA firms and advisors around the country. She was recently named to the Investment News 40 Under 40 list, and her expertise spans over 15 years in our industry, helping firms and advisors connect, engage, and communicate effectively with their best clients. Her passion to promote the industry is demonstrated through her involvement with the CFP Board Center for Financial Planning Workforce Development Advisory Group. She is also part of the Pledge 1% global movement, having pledged 1% of her personal equity, profits, time, and products to nonprofits in the wealth management community. My guest began her career at John Hancock Financial Network before launching her own business, Caritative Wealth Consulting, and then merging that company into her second business venture, FiComm Partners, in 2014. Her current firm, FiComm, exists to expand the impact of financial advice by leading human-centered business change through new school marketing, PR, and advisor marketing education. Recognized as a top 4 industry disruptor in 2020 by wealthmanagement.com, FiComm services allow advisors to lead with authenticity, target their focus, and drive to success. She's a regular blogger and spokesperson in the media on topics related to financial services, marketing, communications, and is also a sought-after speaker at a wide range of industry events, including the Schwab Impact Event, Pershing's Insight, Bob Veris's Insider Forum, Echelon Partners Deals and Dealmakers Summit, Riskalyze Fearless Investing Summit, Investment News Best Practices Workshop, and the Top Advisory Firm Summit. Her firm also produces an engaging podcast called The New School, which you can find on Apple Podcasts and on her website, FiCommPartners.com/The New School Podcast. Welcome to the Future of Advice, Megan Carpenter.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for being here. I'm doing excellent. We have sunshine and blue skies finally here in Michigan. Our 4 foot of snow is starting to melt, and it feels like spring's coming, so it's a great day.
Good. Well, I'm on the West Coast. I'm in Los Angeles, so I have beautiful weather all year round. And it's nice. It's nice when you finally have the chance to come a little bit out of winter and enjoy.
Well, I've got a ton of questions. I'm really excited for our conversation today. It's not that often that I get to have a conversation with somebody whose background and specialty is in communication and marketing for financial advisors. This is an area of mine that I have a little bit of a passion project in. So I'm gonna jump right in, and I want to start by reading the headline off of your website. Not to make it cliche or anything, but it caught my attention when I started researching, you and your firm and prepping for this interview, and I want you to kind of expound on it for me. The headline reads as follows: "This is not the information age. This is the communication age. Grow with the times." That statement to me is extremely bold. It's also maybe one that needs some clarification. So expound on that for us and why you thought that was the most important thing to start your website with.
Yeah, well, we really just believe that the best way to connect with people today is to create this really human, authentic, vulnerable connection with them by the way that you're communicating. And I think that we've been so focused specifically in this industry, but also outside of this industry, on just the amazing tech revolution that we've all been living in and watching firsthand. And I think that what is very easy to get sort of lost in just the rapid pace of innovation that we're feeling from the tech sector is that there's still this sort of question around, and how do I connect with people in a way that helps me to grow my business or to make more meaningful relationships with people, to develop better relationships with my clients, to connect with people that wouldn't have otherwise known me. And so at FiComm, we just really believe that there is this great opportunity for financial advisors to use communication as a connector. And as a connector that actually helps them to build their business. And so that's very core to who we are as a marketing and PR firm, is we help our clients to communicate more effectively so that they can reach more people, serve more clients, and do so in a much more effective and scalable way.
Yeah, and it might just be me, but one of the things that I think resonated with me about that statement was all too often, and our website was probably guilty of this for a little while too, there's this idea that you just need to have information on your website. Consumers will find it. They will hire you because of the content on your website. And it would seem to me that that is what you're talking about here. About this isn't the information age. We're not just putting a Wikipedia of all the wonderful things we do out there. Tell us, in your expert opinion, what the difference is between just having an outwardly facing website versus actually having a communication strategy or plan.
It's really important. And I think specific to our space, so talking about financial advisors typically view their website as a digital brochure, right? So they put together a brochure. Advisors love to have something tangible to take to them. I mean, obviously,
a sell sheet.
Yeah, we're still living in a global pandemic, so we're not seeing as many people in person as we used to. And hopefully this will be a great outcome, is that advisors will rely less on brochures, which I've always said are like the most expensive piece of trash that you'll ever create. But typically when building a website, financial advisors will take what's in a brochure, a printed brochure, and they'll just put it on the website. So we have to say everything that we do, we need to make sure it's all there. And the reality is that that's not how people consume information online. And so when someone lands on your website, it's really important that you're able to hook them in. And it's not so much about having like the most clever or eloquent headline. It's really about just being very clear in why you do what you do and who you do it for. And whatever that headline is on the homepage of your website, it just needs to be really clear. So when that right person lands on your website, they're like, oh, Ron gets me. Okay, I'm going to click through and then I'm going to learn more. And then you want to deliver them with information that's basically helping them through their decision-making journey. So you sort of want to answer questions before they ask. You want to make resources available, but you don't need to give like a laundry list of every single thing that you do. You don't need to talk necessarily about number of years in the business, assets under management. You don't have to put your designations, front and center. There's a lot of that they can learn if they go to read your bio and they continue to engage in the website. But websites today are really just another communication tool. It's another way for people to come to learn about you and to self-select in to engage in your process. And when you sort of flip it a little bit and think, okay, I'm actually just trying to get them to engage, then it becomes very clear that you have to build your website in a different way. Whereas what we do today is we typically just put it all out there and it's sort of like a yes or no. And honestly, people's decisions for choosing a financial advisor are never that black and white. And so you have to help them along the journey.
Interesting. I think one of the things that I see advisors doing a lot, and I used to be guilty of this, you mentioned that, when the right person gets to your website and they're like, they get me, that's me. It feels like, and I could be wrong, but it feels like advisors and firms tend to want to paint a really broad brushstroke, right? Like we work with doctors and lawyers and attorneys and athletes and business owners and high income earning executives. And then they try and make a website that's everything to everybody and it attracts nobody.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I say this a lot. If anyone's ever heard me at an event or, listen to me talk, it's very common for you to land on an advisor's website and they'll say something along the lines of, we provide comprehensive, holistic, fiduciary, financial planning and investment management for individuals, families, and businesses. And to your point, Ron, if you're saying that you do all things for all people, from a marketing perspective, that's effectively you saying that you do nothing for no one, because nobody can identify with that. And I think that that's just a really common hesitation that financial advisors have, which is I don't want to go so narrow that I alienate my client base or that I remove myself from the selection process of, someone I might want to work with that doesn't fit in my ideal target market. But what advisors need to remember about marketing, the purpose of marketing is to get in front of people that would otherwise have not known you. So it's about attracting attention and building relationships with people that wouldn't have met you through your family, through your friends, through your community, through your existing client base. And so your marketing efforts have to be super targeted. I mean, that's just like, we believe that the new school mindset for marketing is you got to be authentic and you have to be super targeted. And so I think that that is an important just sort of switch in mindset is if you're saying you do all things for all people, you're going to have a really tough time in marketing because people are going to come and find you and they're not going to be able to identify with why you're so great. And because of that, they're just going to bounce off. And I also would say that you should think about how often your clients actually interact with your website once they become a client. that's typically where they're then going to move into a client portal and receiving ongoing communications from you. You're not going to go to your website necessarily. Like once they've selected you, they've done the research, they've validated you, they've made the selection. Maybe they'll go to your website if they forgot your address. But, other than that, websites are really for people that don't know you. And so you want to position the material that way.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that strikes me as an untapped power yet for advisors, and it's going to sound silly to say this, but is the power of social media and specialization, right? When our firm started 3 years ago and we said, okay, we're going to build our business by having a digital marketing engine. Just when I was running tests, I said, here's this persona that's our perfect client. And we had these items. And I'm like, I wonder how many people, the social media websites will tell me fit this. And I'm thinking like 5,000, 10,000. It was like 3.7 million, right? And I remember talking to our business development director and a few other members on the team going, we can get even more specialized. Like we can filter this down even more and maybe even more. And I feel like that's something that, maybe the advisor sitting inside of a large national firm that's got a very tight lid on what they can say has a harder time doing. But for RIAs that are maybe a little bit more free to create targets, I think this is still, Facebook and social media has been around for a long time, but this still feels to me, and I'd love your opinion on this, like this is still a target-rich environment, an opportunity here. It's not like everybody has already done it successfully and now there's no more unique niches to be tapping into.
Absolutely. And that's one of the greatest benefits of being part of the independent wealth management community is freedom of speech, and you can say what you want to say proudly because you have the ability to do so and you're not constrained by the mothership. I think that to your point on social media and the opportunity that exists, you're absolutely correct. There is no sense that it's all been done before. That we don't see that to be true, and it will not be true in the future. And I think that in the industry, target marketing has sort of developed a little bit of a bad rap because when I got started in the industry I got started as an intern in 2002 and full-time in 2004 is when I started as a marketing coordinator. And at that time, sort of the philosophy around target marketing was doctors, dentists, like a very specific type of profession. And the truth is that's not the only way to target your market. And if you have a clear affinity and connection to one of those types of groups, fantastic. But what a target market looks like for financial advisors today is much more based on psychographics than it is demographics. So it's, how does your, the target market that you serve the best, what keeps them up at night? What are some of their financial pain points? How do they make decisions? How do they do research? Who do they talk to when they're considering hiring a financial advisor? What do they want out of their life? Like, what are their goals and objectives? And so then you can start to paint a target demographic that's actually like quite clear and very specific to you as a financial advisor. And you don't have to worry about someone else targeting that same psychographic because your unique ability as a financial advisor typically lies in one of two areas or sometimes both. One is in your ability to create and maintain really great client relationships. And second is in a technical competency. A lot of times financial advisors have both. But your ability to create and maintain a unique relationship is something that you own and only you own because you're the only you. And so if you can have confidence in knowing that like I don't have to listen to the noise, I don't have to worry about anybody else out there because I'm the only me. And so I can serve these people better than anyone else. And so my marketing is going to be really focused there. That's where you're going to find the most success. And it just doesn't have to be that old school, I work with dentists and this is I have the best service model for dentists.
Yeah, I've thought sometimes to myself, I've joked like that somebody could just say, I work with only people that own yachts, or I work with only people that are at my country club. And it might actually be more successful because it would shrink down the pool to a similar group. All right, I'm going to put a pin here a second because I want to walk back a little bit and I'm going to come back to this conversation because I think it's super helpful. I don't think our industry talks enough about some of the language people in the marketing and communication space do. You started talking about psychographics and stuff like that. I'm going to come back and dig a little bit deeper there, but take me back to pre-FiComm, right? So you were at a large national firm, right? Then you started your own Caritative Wealth strategies. What was the catalyst or what was that inflection point where you one day had the light bulb went off, the entrepreneurial seizure, whatever it was, and you're like, I'm going to go start a firm for advisors. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, a few things. One is I grew up in the insurance broker-dealer world, and I met fantastic people. It was an incredible opportunity for my career. I learned so much and was just given a lot of autonomy and freedom to develop sort of my marketing philosophy. And I'm grateful for that time. And I wanted to get out of the insurance broker-dealer world. It was too many end of year selling variable annuities to get to the conference because I really want to go to Puerto Rico. But it became a little bit difficult for me to be a part of that. And so one of those decision-making, processes for me was I really wanted to be part of the RIA space. So the insurance broker-dealer that I worked for allowed hybrid RIAs, and I happened to work for the first two RIAs on their hybrid platform. And it became crystal clear to me. I really, really aligned with that philosophy. And so that was one thing. I didn't see a path for myself to becoming a general agent. And then the second thing was I went through a pretty significant illness when I was 28, 29 years old that really just caused me to reflect on what am I doing and where am I spending my time? And, it was one of the most positive experiences of my life, as well as one of the most challenging experiences of my life. But what it really forced me to do was it gave me this great opportunity to sort of step outside of myself and say, are you completely fulfilled? And the answer was no. And so I was 29 years old and I decided to start my own, company. And I felt like there was this huge gap that existed in the RIA world for bringing really, thoughtful, strategic, intentional, and experienced marketing consultation to financial advisors that were looking for help growing their business. So I started my own company. And then a year later, I met my former business partner who had started FiComm Partners in the same year. We merged our businesses. And then about 2 years ago, I bought him out of the business and continue to lead and run FiComm today.
Yeah, and tell us a little about your team, because checking out your website and looking at their backgrounds, there's definitely some interesting skill sets and diversity there. Just real quick, tell our listeners and those watching about your team.
Yeah, so the commonality that you'll find across FiComm is that our commitment to the independent wealth management space runs really deep. So on the leadership team, you've got people who've worked at Fidelity, Pershing Advisor Solutions, TD Ameritrade, United Capital, which is now Goldman Sachs. We've grown up in this space. We're super passionate about working with financial advisors in this space. And so you'll find that commonality. As an agency, we do marketing and PR work. We also offer advisor education, and we're very squarely focused in this space. We've been committed to the independent wealth management community since we launched the business and continue that commitment today. We don't go beyond it, and we're really proud of that. And then I would also say that we've just got really amazing diverse professionals that bring technical skills that are complementary to one another. So whether it's, we've got sort of like a digital marketing ninja, we've got someone who's really great on sort of the business consulting and strategy, we've got crisis communications, public relations, and everything in between. But, our ability to help our clients to craft a strategy that's unique to their business and then also execute against that strategy and or teach them how to execute against that strategy is core to who we are as a business. And you'll find that across the disciplines that the professionals at FiComm bring to the work we do.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I checked out your podcast, The New School. For those of my viewers, I'll give the references to it in our footnotes at the end and mention it again. And some of the conversations were fantastic. So great job on launching that. Okay, I promised that we'd kind of come back to a word you said, psychographics. Again, it's not something that I hear talked about at industry conferences, right? I go to an industry conference oftentimes, and there's lots of things about taxes or client experience or technology. It seems to me, and I could be wrong here, that one of the biggest challenges facing our industry is that this kind of sea of sameness or this homogeneity of like every firm. And you kind of mentioned a few words, right? Like, well, we do holistic planning, we care for you, we're fiduciaries, we're independent. And I think to myself, like, that's like saying the window opens, right? Like everybody, like I go to a window and I expect it to like open, right? Talk to us a little bit about how, from your perspective, when you're being engaged by firms and when you're looking around the industry and speaking at conferences and doing research, what's your perspective on this? Do you see this as being one of the challenges that our industry faces right now?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the greatest challenges as well as opportunities. And I know that we'll get to, looking ahead a little bit further in this conversation and what some of the trends are potentially. But I do think that we are in a moment in time where there is such a great opportunity for advisors to really stand above the noise, stand out from the crowd, and just be really proud and excited to be confidently themselves and to not worry about having to feel like, sound like, look like everybody else. And, that's one of the things. I'm very proud of the New School podcast because I feel like the conversations that we're having are really important to be having at this moment in time. But we've had these incredible guests that are just doing things so differently and so uniquely and so like them. And they're so grounded in that and they're so confident in that. And I feel like these are the conversations that we need to bring out, because I can sit here all day and I can tell you, you got to be real and you got to be human and you got to be authentic. And the truth is like, it's hard. I have two small kids at home. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And there's a book that I read to my daughter who's 1. And it's a book about, I think it's called, it's by Nancy Tillman. I'll have to think of the title, but it talks about how you have to learn about all of your bells and whistles, and that it's not always easy to know exactly what your bells and whistles are, and that it can be really easy to be distracted by someone else's bells and whistles. But it's all just about like learning about yourself, and it's a never-ending process. And I think that that's something that as marketers, we often like forsake the industry, because we sit up here and we talk about authenticity and vulnerability, but we don't demonstrate what that actually looks like and what that feels like. And we don't actually give people the space to step into, to be really empowered to be themselves. And so I think to your point about how, the sea of sameness, yes, it's an issue, but then how do you as a financial advisor not be plagued by that issue? You really need support. You need a community around you that holds you up. You need people who are going to push you a little bit and challenge you a little bit. And I think that that's where we as marketers really have a responsibility to the industry to not just say, here's what you need to do, but to actually demonstrate how to do that and to give resources by which to do that. But that's the number one opportunity for advisors today, is to just not worry about sounding like everyone else, feeling like you have to show up like everyone else. Like that's the greatest opportunity you have in front of you as a financial advisor, is to just be really clear on why you do what you do. What's your passion? Who do you want to do it for? And worry about nothing other than that.
Let's say that for the young next gen, growth-oriented advisor, I think about this in terms of like building communities, right, as opposed to even building clients. Where do you start? Do you start by kind of doing a reflective kind of process of saying like, what do I want and what do I like? Should they kind of make it about their own kind of self-awareness and self-fulfillment first? Or do you start maybe in what might come out of a marketing textbook or something about like finding a problem in the industry and then trying to build a product to solve the problem and then marketing that? Is there a right or a wrong, or is there, where would you tell us to start?
Well, I don't believe in absolutes. I mean, I just don't believe that there's ever a right or wrong. There's always just a what's right for you. And I think that that's another area that marketing professionals often just do our industry a disservice, is in saying it's got to be this way or this way. You have to be on social media. You have to be doing video. You have to be doing events. Like, no, you don't. You have to be doing what's right for your business, period. And what's right for your business is not necessarily going to be right for every single business. And so I think that, from a perspective of how we start, I mean, this is just, it's our process. It's what we believe in, and it's what works for our clients, not necessarily what works for everybody. But our process really starts on that question of why. Why do you do what you do? And it sounds like a really simple question, but it's actually very difficult to answer. So I'll give you an example. If we're meeting with a financial advisor for the first time, we're taking them through this process, and we'll ask them, why do you do what you want to do? 9 out of 10 times it's, I want to help people have greater financial clarity. I want to help people have greater financial confidence. I want to help people to retire happy. Great. That's great. That means that you care about your clients. But why? Why do you want to do that? And we usually have to go through, a 15 to sometimes hour-long conversation. It can be a little bit uncomfortable because we're pushing and we're digging and we're asking the same question again and again and
Yeah,
again.
that's not deep enough. Take me one more layer. That's not deep enough. Take me one more layer. Got it.
Right. So, and as an example, we have a profile of an advisor that we use in our advisor education where we teach virtual marketing workshops. And so her name is Sarah, and we sort of use her as a demonstration tool. Well, so come to find out, Sarah's why is very, very related to the fact that her mother was divorced at a young age and found herself not working and completely unaware of how to handle her own personal finances. And so Sarah saw her dad in a certain light of having, from her perspective, sort of everything figured out, and from her mom's perspective, sort of lost and wandering and afraid and lonely. And so that shaped sort of subconsciously Sarah's approach to managing her own finances. And then when it came time to select a career and choosing to become a financial advisor, that sort of underlying story that she had, that she brought to work every day, was driving everything that she was doing. So now that we know Sarah's why, her why was, I don't want women to go through what my mom went through. So I want to take them from that. I'm scared, I'm lonely, I'm feeling like I don't have even the right questions to ask, nonetheless the right answer. She wants to take her clients from that feeling to a feeling of, I am confident in my ability to make my own financial decisions. And so it's in that, change from this to this that she's really able to deliver value that's like so far beyond a financial plan or, an investment allocation. It really cuts into helping people, to women, specifically in Sarah's case, to like fundamentally change their lives for the better. But it wasn't until we had that specific story, because she could have even told us, I really want to work with divorcees, but that still doesn't help us.
Yeah. Why divorcees? Yeah.
Right. And so everybody has a story. Like everybody
Mhm.
has an underlying story of why they do what they do. I do what I do. So I am the owner and CEO of a financial services communications firm, but I do what I do to create fulfillment. So for me, it's about my own personal fulfillment, but it's about creating fulfillment for our clients. And that fulfillment is generated in that sort of giving them that sense of purpose and relating that back to their marketing in a way that drives actual business growth. And maybe what I'm even more proud of is that I can create fulfillment for my team by creating a work environment. We have mostly women that work with us, a lot of working moms. I can create fulfillment for them by giving them a work environment that's very supportive, that's incredibly flexible, and that they're surrounded by people who are similar to them, so that when they have to, like at the, randomly at 10 o'clock in the morning, they have a full day of schedule, and then they get that call from the nurse at school and they have to be gone, they have no guilt. They are fully supported at FiComm, because we've all been there. We've all done it.
Got it.
So I do this to create fulfillment. That has nothing to do with financial services communication, but that's my why. And so everything that I build at FiComm is to support that why. And it's a trickle down effect. And so you do have to get really specific. You sort of have to look inward before you can look outward. And again, that's our philosophy.
No, I think that one, it resonates with me. I had a couple of life events that happened to me right before we started LifeWorks, and I won't share them here, but they really were eye-awakening. They woke me up, they opened my eyes, so to speak. And I remember one of the things that I thought was, if this is what I'm gonna do for my last day of life, is like, this is what I really want to spend today doing. I know Steve Jobs has a famous, commencement speech from Stanford, I think it was like 2007, where he talked about how every day he used to get up and, answer one simple question, which is, if today is the last day of my life, is what I'm about to do, how I want to spend it. And if the answer was no for long enough, he would change. Would you recommend to those of us that are running firms and or advisors inside of either, independent firms or national firms, to craft that personal story and then lead with that?
Again, I mean, I think it's definitely our personal philosophy, and we've seen the power that can be, felt through leading with that personal story, that personal why. It's just the greatest way to make a connection. But I'll also tell you, Ron, that there are going to be some advisors that doesn't align with their beliefs or philosophy at all. And
Sure.
they might be listening to me right now and thinking like, she is very woo woo. And like, I do not identify with that at all. And like,
Yeah.
that's okay too. Do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
there's a process for everybody.
Yeah, they heard you say there's no absolutes, and their math brain was going, yes, there is. There absolutely is. Like, I can calculate a rate of return. It's absolute. Like, my taxes are, yeah.
Yes, but in marketing, there are no absolutes. And so, I would say that my belief is that, yes, that's the best way. It's the most fulfilling way. I've seen the success, and the success is not, it's found in a lot of different ways. So like you could have success in saying, well, I really want to run a business that looks like this. And it's very, like maybe my lifestyle needs to change, and I'm working too many hours, or the stress is getting to me, or I don't have any relationship with my children because I'm working so hard. And so I need to shift my business from this to this. Marketing can help with that. Marketing can help you to be really focused and really efficient and really fulfilled. And so that's where I think, our sort of new school mindset, which is all about vulnerability and authenticity and targeting your focus for success, like I've seen it work. But it's not the only way to do it.
Well, yeah, you just said something there too that I think is probably a prerequisite to all of this, which is the advisor or the owner of the firm has to have a really clear vision, right? You can't market to bring in clients or to grow your business if you don't know where you're going.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's just such an important sort of problem to solve, or characteristic to understand. Like, do I have this? Do I not? Do I need to create it? And I'll tell you, I mean, we've worked with hundreds of advisors and firms since we started the business, and it's very, very difficult for us to come in and to provide value when there is misalignment in vision or no vision whatsoever. And so that's why we actually offer consulting as one of our services, because when we identify that as a gap, we'll be bold enough to say, actually, Mr. or Mrs. Client, we actually can't go to the strategy and the execution yet, because there is no marketing strategy without a business vision. Mm-hmm. And so I do a lot of the consulting work because I'm a business owner myself. And so I can help to sort of shape that, ask the right questions, but that absolutely is sort of a fundamental need, is to know your core values, your vision, where the business is going. Marketing is not going to solve those business deficiencies. So it's important to tackle the fundamentals before you do anything, before you make decisions about technology, before you invest in marketing, before you think about building out a client service model or hiring additional staff. Like, you need to be very clear on why you're in business, where you're going, what the vision is. You need to have like a North Star, so that all of those other decisions can support you moving as quickly, efficiently, and successfully as possible toward the North Star.
Yeah, I mean, one, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that in the absence of vision, it's hard to reorient, especially when you have a year like 2020. I mean, we're still, dealing with the pandemic kind of hopefully on the back end of it here. But I mean, when life gets turned upside down, if you don't have a really clear picture of where you're going, it's really hard to rally the troops, so to speak, and even yourself back to that. So the most recent TD Ameritrade FA Insight study, and I know Schwab does a big study every year as well. I read through that multiple times, and one of the things that just absolutely jumped out at me, and I want to just read you a quote from it. It really blew my mind when I read it. So, several thousand firms, I can't remember exactly how many responded to the study. I know my firm was part of it too. One of the things that jumped out at me was the lack of investment and spending by firms on, let's say, business development and growth. Here's one of their quotes. Just 47% of firms indicated that they had a marketing plan in place. So like already less than half even said they had a marketing plan. A result almost identical to 2018, so even a couple years back. So nothing's changed in the last couple years. But of these firms, only 23% reported that their marketing plan was effective in generating new business opportunities. Does that shock you as well, or is this part of why you also started your business, because you have a wide open, landscape ahead of you of people like me that need your help.
It doesn't shock me, only because of the number of years that I've been in the industry. And, my experience has been that I often find myself sort of passionately standing in front of people and almost like begging them to care about marketing. And I will say that even though those numbers, which thank you for sharing those with me in advance, haven't changed much since 2018, sort of, anecdotally, I do see, and I am experiencing a lot of positive momentum for the good of marketing in this space. And I think we're just going to continue to see that. It doesn't shock me. And I don't actually think that it's entirely the advisor's responsibility. I mean, I think as an industry, we've just done like a huge disservice in how we've helped advisors to grow their business. And we as an industry have really placed a lot of pretty hardcore bets on like a few specific things. If you think back to some of the key themes that you've heard talked about amongst the industry, like there's been so much talk about M&A, because M&A is hot and everyone's doing mergers and acquisitions. You hear a lot of talk about the next gen advisor. You hear a lot of talk about the client experience and client service models. And then you've got, if you think about the number one place that people go to for this type of advice, and actually that'd be a good question. Like, what would you think if you're a financial advisor that's a smaller advisor that's out there running their own practice and you have a question about where to go, like, what do I do with my business? Who would you go ask?
It's probably an easy question for me. That's simple. I would pick up the phone and I would call Ray Scalafani with ClientWise, but I also have been in his coaching program for a long time. But if I strip that away, that's a shameless plug. I get no money for it. But for every advisor listening, go check out clientwise.com and see Ray's coaching program. I think what would probably happen is, and I had this experience before we started working with Ray and his team, was we just asked around for connections to like a marketing person, and we ended up wasting a lot of money on somebody who didn't know our industry, and made some shiny sell sheets and maybe a new website, and after tens of thousands of dollars to spend, you're kind of like, well, I should have just asked for some more referrals and gone to a couple more networking events and saved the money, right? I mean, I know I've done that. I'm guilty of bringing in marketing people and then writing them a check and going, yeah.
And you're right. There's usually two places that advisors go. They'll go to their peers. So they'll ask around within their community, but they're asking a group of people that over half of them don't have a marketing strategy and less than a quarter of them think it works. Or you'll go to your custodian or your broker dealer and they'll put you in touch with their practice management consultants who are fantastic at what they do, and they're not marketers. Practice management consultants are not marketers, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, they shouldn't have been put in the position where they have to help financial advisors with marketing if they're not marketers. Marketing, public relations, branding is a very specific discipline. And too many people try to wear the hat that says, I'm a growth expert, I'm a client experience expert, I'm a change consultant, so I'm also do marketing. And I just have found that that's where there's this like big gap in the industry, is that your advisors are not getting the advice that they need. And that's why I say I don't think it's really entirely the advisor's responsibility to not have a plan and their plan isn't working. I mean, why would you invest in money? Why would you invest any money in a plan that's not working? I think that just doesn't make any sense to me. But as an industry, that's just sort of how we've approached it. And so the good news is that there are a lot of, newer, specific, focused experts in this space who are bringing really great insight to advisors, and we're trying to figure out how to do it at scale. I mean, that's why we launched advisor education. Our core retained services are, best in the business. I would stand up against anyone else for our ability to help a firm craft specific messaging, turn that messaging into a business strategy that, has marketing goals that support your business goals, and then we can execute on it in a way that's going to deliver results. Those services are specific to a type of advisor who are making an investment that feels really good and comfortable for them to reach their growth goals and objectives. And there's also a lot of advisors that are not going to make that investment. And so we launched advisor education to sort of scale our ability to take what we do on the retained side, but to deliver it to, hundreds of and thousands and maybe even hundreds of thousands of advisors in a way that's very, very approachable, because we just feel like there's this huge need to give advisors access to real marketing and PR insights and coaching and education and peer support, because the industry just doesn't do it. And I think that that's why you have those numbers that you have. And I think you also have numbers on budget. It's just, it's backwards for an industry that's trying to grow.
Yeah, I mean, the another number from that same study was that the median marketing expenditure as a percentage of revenue has been steady at 1.6% of the P&L. Right? I mean, it's kind of laughable. It shouldn't be, but we're the only industry that talks about being growth focused all the time and building for the next generation and having forward-looking, kind of strategies. And any other industry that's only spending 1.6% of their P&L on marketing and growth, it's like, that's crazy.
It is crazy. And if you read the fine print too, it's usually like marketing and business development. So I think of sales, marketing, and the client experience as like three very related but very, very separate disciplines and also areas of your budget. And so if you think that 1.6, 1.7% is even maybe split between like client dinners and
golf outings, charity events,
like even less. And if you look outside the industry on average, the Gartner annual CMO study shows it is actually 11%. Companies spend 11% of top line revenue specifically to marketing. So we are like woefully behind. But to the earlier statistic with, less than half of the firms having a strategy and less than a quarter or around a quarter thinking that it doesn't work, it doesn't surprise you, right? Because why would you invest in something that you don't think is going to work?
Yeah.
So I get it. I see it and I get it.
Yeah, I think part of the long result of having a business model where advisors essentially see their income going up even when they don't do any more work, right? I mean, we do still live in a world where 96% of all revenue, again, coming from the same, study from TD Ameritrade, 96% of firms' revenue comes from the AUM fee. And the beauty of that model is it's scalable, but when the market goes up 33%, like 2019, and you didn't do any more work necessarily, and you have a pay raise of that significance, I think it maybe breeds a little bit of, I might as well poke the bear, I think it breeds a little bit of a lax and lazy business owner mindset, right? Because then it just becomes more about, mowing my own lawn in the backyard as opposed to like, how can I go find, additional clients and bring them in? And it seems like that's the M&A space maybe too, right? Is that the larger firms can look out there and say dollar for dollar, I can go buy a known entity, right? And here's my 6, 7, 8 year payoff or whatever, money's cheap. Or I can go spend X hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing, and the last time so and so did that, they lost, nothing happened, right? So they just don't.
Right. I mean, I think the important takeaway is that it doesn't have to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like there's so much that you can do, even if you're looking at that 2% budget, which I would encourage people to look at closer to 5, like at a minimum. But even if you're just looking at that 2% budget, you can make magic happen. You just have to be very strategic in how you're doing it. And you have to be super closely aligned to business goals and objectives. And I think that that's where there's also just a really big disconnect is an advisor will say, well, I need to do a rebrand. I need a new website, and I haven't done this in 20 years and it's just old and it's stale. And rebrands cost money. And so a lot of advisors feel like before they do anything, they have to do a rebrand. And I often say, well, let's really look at it. And can we just do a facelift instead of a rebrand? Because can we make sure that all of your, digital properties are working together and everything's connected? And of course you need the message to be good. We started there when we were talking about FiComm's website. There are some things that have to be done, but it doesn't have to be this huge investment. And so I always say, like, you have to be super clear on your business goals. And so if your business goals are, if you've been able to narrow them down enough to where is every new dollar, net new asset dollar coming from? And what do I need to do to get that net new asset dollar in the door? Is it coming from existing clients, whether it's increased wallet share? Is it coming from existing clients through referrals? Or is it coming from prospects that don't know you? Any of those three things, just as an example, are going to have different marketing drivers. And so it's about understanding, why am I spending this? What is my desired outcome? And making sure that the two are connected. And if you can't make that connection, I would argue that you shouldn't spend the money. I would argue that you just wait until you're able to make that clear connection. And then if you do have budget and you're just at a point in the development of your business where you're like, no, I need to turbocharge my growth. I really want to be aggressive. So over the last couple of years, net of market, I've grown this percentage and I want to triple it. And I'm willing to invest this amount. Then just make sure that you're working with a team of professionals that can help you to make the most of that money, because it's difficult. And I will tell you, as a marketer, marketing is basically like one big giant experiment, and you have to keep testing and listening and learning and iterating.
Yeah.
And so, working with a team of professionals and having access to those types of professionals that can help you make the most of that budget is also going to be really critical.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned this before, it doesn't have to be expensive. I know some colleagues, advisors in the space that, they started doing, really thoughtful messaging on LinkedIn, like direct outreach. And, they're bringing in a client a week right now just based off of efforts. And it was really more about having the right message and then figuring out who's the right person that I actually need to go after. And they're, tremendous success on a shoestring budget, right? In fact, they're, some of them are doing so well, I've kind of jokingly said, like, maybe we should be doing more of that, right? So I think the misnomer too, that you have to have this, like, this 40-page marketing plan document. Let's maybe talk a little bit about this. Talk to me and those listening, like, what does it mean to have a marketing plan, right? Because maybe like a strategic plan document or a financial plan document, maybe for those of us that aren't in the marketing and communication space, branding space, when we hear that, we're thinking like a 3-ring binder full of everything already figured out. What's a definition of like an effective marketing plan or a workable marketing plan?
You can have a 1-page workable marketing plan. It does not have to be a binder full of information and ideas. Oftentimes those can just be wasted because you can't actually execute on it. So fundamentally what you want to have, and this will go back to what I talked about earlier, but you want to have, like, as part of core to everything that you do, why do I do what I do and who do I do it for? Because that's your vision and that's your target market. But those can be 2 sentences. And then you want to have a very clear definition, bullet points of what are my business goals and objectives. So is it revenue growth? Is it asset growth? Is it inorganic growth? But get really specific. So if it's asset growth, where is that asset growth coming from? If it's an increase in financial planning revenue, where is that revenue coming from? Existing clients, centers of influence, new prospects. So just getting really clear on those business goals and objectives. I would encourage you to have no more than 3 to 5, because at some point it just becomes impossible to prioritize.
Too many. Yep.
Prioritize your top 3, maybe top 5. And then the rest, so let's say that's the top third of 1 page. The rest of the document, the 1 page, can just be about how am I going to reach those business goals and objectives? What are the things that I'm going to focus on that I know I can execute on in my business tomorrow? I don't have to spend a lot of time like getting set up and ready to go, but what can I start doing? Where you're going to start getting extended, and like, don't get me wrong, we do very in-depth strategic communication plans for some of our clients. And where it gets extended is in what we would call like an editorial calendar. So that's in just mapping out what content are we creating and when, and making sure there's a strategy behind it, that there is a cohesiveness to the content that we're creating, and that there's a purpose behind the type of content that we're creating. And so that's where you can sort of have like a month by month breakdown of, okay, here's the content. And by the way, content could be anything. Content could be a workshop. Content could be a social media post. Content could be a downloadable asset. Content could be a press release. Content is like the huge bucket. But that's where you'll get past the 1 page. And then, okay, now that I have my why, my who, my business goals, what marketing and PR, tactics are going to support those business goals. Then on the following pages, you'll say, and here's what I'm doing in January. Here's what I'm doing in February. Here's what I'm doing in March. And of course, any plan needs to be able to pivot, just like a good financial plan does. Whatever we went through last year, the best financial advisors were those that were able to help their clients navigate that, not because they had all the answers, but because they were able to guide them through what we were all experiencing. Marketing is no different. Your plan needs to be able to pivot and shift, but you still sort of want to have an expectation of here's the content that I'm creating and then who's creating it. And that's where your plan should also be a bit of an accountability mechanism. And your plan should also have intended outcomes. So, I'm going to invest in, let's say, LinkedIn advertising, I'm going to expect that I get this out of it. And then you need to be tracking to that metric specifically, whether it's pay-per-click advertising, investing in SEO, launching a podcast, doing a video series, hosting virtual workshops, like whatever it might be. You need to have very specific intended outcomes, but it doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
No, and I think if I'm tracking your outline right, you have your why, right? Why you're doing what you're doing. You have who you're doing it for. You have what you're trying to achieve, the business objectives. Then you have a how, and then you have kind of an accountability roadmap for when things have to happen. I know we're oversimplifying work that is heavy lifting, but I think for those that are listening to this too, even starting with writing those bullet points down on a piece of paper and just starting to investigate and think about those, I would imagine is really valuable. Have you guys seen kind of post-COVID, an uptick in firms that are trying to figure out how to do marketing better, specifically maybe in the digital space or social media, things like that? Is that something that's really picked up now, kind of, necessity being the mother of all invention,
Absolutely. And I feel like, the last year has been so hard, and people have dealt with it in their own ways and experienced their own hardships and their own tragedies. And I mean, it's been a horrific experience. And so I don't mean to downplay any of that at all. I also believe that there have been some really positive silver linings, and that's just my personality. Like, I'm always thinking, how can I make something positive out of this? And I think that one of the greatest silver linings for our industry is that it forced us as an industry to be more digital. You could no longer rely on those dinners or meetings across your client's kitchen table or the in-person quarterly reviews. Like, advisors overnight had to become digital virtual. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. We have seen an increase in advisors who have a much greater appetite and willingness to learn about how they could be showing up online, and how to leverage some of these great, to your point, like very inexpensive opportunities to connect with people. And I think that we also, we're finally meeting our consumers where they're at, but we've been really behind. Our consumers have been on social media for a long time. Our consumers have been using search engines to get information for a long time. So we're finally now just meeting them where they're at. And that's ultimately a super net positive for our industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important point, from the focus of being the industry, right? Talking about the positives that have come from COVID. One of the ones that we've seen is meeting clients where they're at, and clients also adopting video communications, right? I mean, we even have clients now where we said, hey, our office is back open in a limited, safe way. And they're like, it's just as effective to hop on a quick Zoom call, save the drive, save the time. And so even the thought of, back to maybe where we started at the very beginning, kind of talking about, our first experience with digital marketing, realizing there's like 3.7 million people that fit this persona. They don't have to be in your backyard. They don't have to go to your country club, right? Advisors now, and it's perfectly acceptable at all age demographics. I mean, our target persona is like, early retirees. They are just as comfortable now hopping on Zoom calls and GoTo meetings and Google Meets, because they do it to see their grandkids and to, other functions. And now we're engaging that way, and it's like, man, this is productive, and we can, build really great relationships thanks to these tools, and be super effective.
Right, and video is not just about video conferencing. I mean, we love video as the number one tool to connect with people very authentically throughout your entire prospecting client experience. So using video at every single touch point, having your staff use video, like having your staff create a video to send to a new client about how to fill out their new client onboarding paperwork.
What are some, let me ask you real quick, I'm going to pause here, sorry to interrupt you. What are a couple of your favorite tools for doing those kind of like quick personalized videos and sending them to clients?
Yeah, so we have a DIY video workshop where we teach advisors how to show up really great and confidently on video. And the two tools that we most often recommend are, one, it's called Soapbox by Wistia, and the other is Loom. And what they do is they use your webcam to record your face as well as your screen at the same time. Very user friendly. Then you can go in, you can edit. Do you want my face, the whole video? Do you want a split screen with me and whatever I'm sharing on the screen? You can zoom in, you can zoom out. Super easy to use. And there's free versions of both of those tools.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know we're running late on time, and I want to make sure we cover this, because this is hence the name of the podcast, The Future of Advice. So you have a really interesting perspective and where you get to sit consulting with firms and advisors all over the country, right? And looking at their business models, what's working, what's not working. Let's talk about the future of our industry and shift gears. What do you think the wealth management industry is going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from 20 years from now, or somewhere in that kind of time range? What are some trends? What are some things that you see positive changes coming? What are maybe some threats to the current business model?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a hope first, and my hope is that I hope it's more diverse. I think that this, to your point about homogeneity, I just think that this industry, we all look the same, and that just can't be. Like, that is killing innovation. And there are so many opportunities to be really intentional about how we as an industry show up and as a more diverse industry. And so my hope is that in very, short periods of time, 5 years, 10 years, that we absolutely begin to reflect the makeup of this country. I would also say that I believe that we are going to see the rise of personal brands for financial advisors. And so this sort of is to tie together everything that we've just been talking about. But I think that there is a really big opportunity for financial advisors to be able to rise above the noise, stand out from the crowd by creating their own personal brands, even if they're part of a national corporation or potentially like a regional RIA firm. I think that firms that empower their individual advisors to show up as themselves, to create content that resonates for their client and no one else's, to show up in a way that they feel really good about, are those that are going to be most successful from a marketing perspective. My friend Danny Fava, who works at Envestnet, she published the 4 social megatrends that she sees coming, and she calls it the age of the creator. And I couldn't agree more. I think that advisors in 5 years' time will be creating more content and distributing that content digitally than what we're currently seeing today, and doing so in ways that are really powerful. I think recently we've seen some sort of very interesting examples of this with what happened on Reddit, with GameStop, with what you see happening on TikTok, which the personal finance hashtag is one of their most popular hashtags, but it's not being delivered by financial advisors. It's being delivered by influencers that actually have nothing, they just don't have the background. And so there are people doing it. And so it's going to be about those financial advisors that figure it out. So I think it's sort of going to be the rise of advisors creating content, whether or not they own their own business or they're part of a huge field force. I think that that's something that we're really going to see. I also think that specific to the independent RIA community, we will start to see national brands become household names in the same way that you see that right now with, some of the larger wirehouses that, have that really strong brand recognition. I think that we will start to see, based on what's happening today, the rise of national independent RIA brands that have brand equity that is competing with the likes of, the Merrill Lynch's and the Morgan Stanleys.
Yeah, I think that's a really. I hope for that same thing. Actually, your wish list is in similar to mine. I want to make sure I catch the reference for our viewers and listeners. You referenced a friend of yours at Envestnet that wrote about the four trends. Can you tell us what the title of that?
Yeah, her name is Danny Fava. But if you just go to Envestnet.com. and you select resources, I think it's in their main navigation bar. You can go down to resources, and it's called the 4 social megatrends.
Awesome. We'll find it and post it in our notes. I think this. I think the idea of this creating personal brands goes back to the comment I made about having communities and tribes and individual advisors being very niche. One of my hopes is that the firms will kind of let go of their ego a little bit, right? And it's not about, the moniker on the wall. Clients aren't choosing to work with the firm because they're a big firm or something like this. But I think the fear that maybe is residing inside of the ego from some of the largest firms and maybe even large regional RIAs is that if individual advisors get too good at their own personal brand, especially now that it's I'm not going to say it's easy. That's a misnomer. There's still a lot of work in setting up your own RIA. But maybe relative to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, like building an RIA now today is much easier than it used to be. And so I see this kind of pervasive trend in the industry being that firms are trying to figure out how to tie advisors down, so to speak, and make them reliant on their brand and make them reliant on their tools. And that's still kind of driving this idea of, well, you go to market as XYZ company. You don't go to market with your own personal brand and unique story and very differentiated message. And I don't know if we want to call that ego. I don't know. Maybe I'm poking the industry a little hard here, but that seems to me to be like, well, we're, pick a big firm, right? I used to get that at my last firm, right? It was like, well, why would you want to personally brand yourself? We're XYZ. Nobody knows who you are. And it's like, yeah, but I have got a story to tell and a community of people that are interested in it.
Yeah, we help firms solve this challenge all the time. It is a little bit ego, it's a little bit fear, it's a little bit of ignorance, but I think that the reason an advisor chooses to affiliate with your firm, like that's no different than that advisor trying to get a client to choose them. It's about like, what is it that you offer that advisor that no matter that all these other platforms can do it, there's something about your relationship that can't be replicated. And that's why they stay with you. And so the ability for a firm to overcome that fear is just to have confidence in what they deliver, why they deliver it, and who they deliver it to. And I will tell you, because I do have the opportunity to work with a lot of younger advisors, and everyone in the industry is trying to solve this talent gap with the next gen advisor. If you are going to handcuff your client, your younger advisors, and tell them you can't be on social, you can't be doing podcasts, you can't be creating video, you can't be on TikTok, you will have an open front door and an open back door, and turnover is going to be a huge problem for you. And so there are some really cool firms out there that are doing super interesting things to empower their advisors to not just like allow them to be great marketers, but to teach them how to be great marketers and to give them the access and the opportunity and the availability to do what they want to do. Those are going to be the firms that will succeed. It's the ones that are fear-based and are trying to just control everything and put their arms around everything and like lock people up with contracts and own their clients. Like those are dinosaurs. Those people, those firms aren't going to be around.
Yeah, I call them zombies, right? They're walking dead. There's still a lot of inertia behind them, so they'll be there for a while. But yeah, it's, they hide behind compliance, right? Oh, well, compliance. It's like, look, you can do Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and text with your clients. There are software companies that have already solved like archiving all of that and searching it in real time. And so that stuff's solved. So I've looked at it and said, is it really truly compliance and regulatory issues, or is it something else? And I think it's probably more to the fear, the ego, if our advisors get too good at running independent of us and their brand is worth more than our brand, then we can't control them. We can't, and that's one of the things I see. Okay, I've got a two-part question to wrap up, and you've already given me a fair amount actually to chew on, so I think are same for our viewers too. Two-part question for you, okay? If you could give one piece of advice or share one message with ambitious, hungry, growth-oriented next-gen advisors, what would it be?
Just one piece of advice would be to get really centered on why you're doing what you're doing and to have nothing but confidence in that. And don't worry about looking like everyone else, sounding like everyone else, showing up like everyone else. Just stay really clear on your why. And if you can do that, you will be successful.
That's awesome. All right, second part of the question. What advice would you give to the firms and the leaders of firms as they're trying to build, winning teams and grow the value of their company?
Believe in the power of marketing. I mean, this is what I do for a living, but I've seen such incredible transformation that has come from leaders who believe that marketing is more than just a check the box, but it's actually a part of your business that can drive transformational change, when you approach it with the mindset that that's possible. And to just sort of reiterate what we were just talking about, have that belief and allow the advisors that are part of your firm to have that belief too, because you have to be working in tandem. You can't be controlling, you can't be constricting, you have to be sort of allowing and empowering your advisors. You can have the same brand. I'm not saying that you have to let every single individual advisor brand differently, but just allow them to show up in ways that they feel really good about, because that's where they're going to find the most success.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, last question, and then I'll let you close us out maybe with final thoughts. I always ask people this. I love reading. I hate being asked this question because it's always hard to pick. But if you had to pick today, what are three really good book recommendations for that advisor who wants to grow with the times? And there was another quote on your site that maybe when we have you back on for another video, I'd like to just spend time talking about a statement where you talked about helping advisors articulate their significance. So what are three, maybe favorite books of yours or maybe long-form podcast or something like that that help them grow with the times and articulate their significance?
Well, selfishly, I would encourage advisors to listen to the New School podcast. It's school with a K. It's our opportunity to demonstrate everything that I've just been spending this time talking with you about, Ron. So I would start there. I'm also a huge podcast fan. So I love how I built that podcast with Guy Raz. I think for entrepreneurial innovation stories to just spur outside of the industry thinking about how entrepreneurs have solved really simple or really complex problems. It's my favorite podcast. I listen to it every time there's a new episode that comes out. And then I think for a book, I just read this, it's actually on my nightstand, but Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. Have you read that one yet? It's another outside the industry perspective, but I think that what Netflix is doing from a marketing perspective and the way that they've completely disintermediated sort of cable television, and the fact that last night was the Golden Globes, that every single actor or actress or director or producer was thanking Netflix. I was oh my gosh, they're such an incredible company to follow. And that book is just really prescriptive about how to create a culture of reinvention. And I think for our industry, it's really important because I think it's an industry that can be and should be reinvented.
Yeah, I love that you close with that book recommendation because I think, here we are 20 years later and we just accept that streaming is, that's just what we do. And even all the main players now, from Disney to Fox to they pulled all their content in-house. They're building streaming just, to kind of now redo what Netflix has done. And I think that's a really great suggestion. All right. Well, Megan, I am absolutely grateful for you carving time out of your hectic schedule, running a business, 2 young kids. Really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure our viewers and listeners do as well. Hopefully we'll get to have you back on and spend more time talking about this. I know we've probably got a long way to go to make more converts yet into believing in the power of marketing and why it's important to have this. If you want to learn more about Megan and her firm, FiComm Partners, you can go to FiCommPartners.com. You can also connect with her on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Megan FiComm. Or you can follow her on Twitter at Megan_FiComm. Megan, thank you for sharing some thoughts on the industry, talking about the future of advice. I really enjoyed the conversation and look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me and the industry this space to think about the industry in new ways. I really appreciate it.
And for our friends, clients, and fellow financial advisors watching this today, my name again is Ron Bullis, and this has been another episode of The Future of Advice. To watch previous episodes and to stay in touch with us, you can go to thefutureofadvice.com. Again, thank you, Megan, for being here, and thank you guys for watching and listening. Take care.